Podcast City Network.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Nest Podcast. This is episode 155. I'm your host, Brandon, joined as always by my co-host, Zach. Zach, what's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. How much of the Olympics have you been watching? It's been on my TV almost nonstop since it started.
Yeah, we watched a significant amount over this weekend. We just kind of watched whatever was on TV, and they made it actually pretty accessible with the NBC app, and they're putting it on obviously NBC and then their sports network, and then they've also put it on USA. So there's plenty to watch. So it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, I know. I've been watching a lot of it on the Peacock, and it's been pretty cool because it's almost like it's on demand. You can watch all the events that you want to see and all that stuff. And we were texting back and forth talking about the skateboarding event, which is crazy that skateboarding is in the Olympics now. Last night we got to see the gymnastics qualifiers and the swimming, and it's been pretty cool. Total medal count, U.S. is in there, but they're not leading it. Is that a big deal to you?
No, not really. One thing that was kind of interesting was that the U.S. did not medal on the first day for the first time since, like they said, like 1974 or something like that.
Yeah. So
that's pretty interesting. I think it just has to do with whatever events that they do first. And if we have people that are good that are in them, we have our select few sports that we're really good at. Swimming is one of those where it seems like just about every swimming event, we have some sort of American that is really good in it and medals. And that's the first one that we watched where an American did win a medal. We watched a men's 400 meter, and we got gold and silver, I think it was, or silver and bronze. I can't remember which order, but two Americans medaled in that one, and that was really fun to see.
Yeah. And, talking about swimming, Katie Ledecky got upset. That was a huge one. She's been hyped as one of the best in the pool, kind of like the Michael Phelps of women, if you will. And then she got upset in the qualifier or in the medal round in the finals. Yeah. She ended up with the silver. So it is what it is. Silver's still good. She's got a lot of events left to go in this Olympics, so she's going to get gold somewhere along the way. She's not going to let these people keep clowning her for the rest of the time. But we've also got the gymnastics finals coming up with Simone. She's going to go out there and just absolutely murk people. She didn't have the best qualifying round, but she's going to go out there focused and ready to go and bring home the gold. So I think it's going to jump up. China's they're up there with 18 gold medals right now. The U.S. is only at 14. Japan right behind them, the host country, with 13. One thing I have noticed that's kind of weird about this Olympics is they all say Olympics 2020 on the signs. They didn't update anything for 2021. I get it that it was supposed to be 2020, but it's just kind of weird. And then knowing that we have another Olympic Games in only 3 years instead of 4 it's kind of a weird one. And real quick, I want to give a shout out to the Philippines. Philippines won their first ever gold medal in almost 100 years of tries. So shout out Philippines.
Do you know what sport?
I think it was weightlifting or something, one of those like obscure sports that it doesn't really, it is. And it was a women's event as well.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And yeah, you're right, Chris. It does cost too much to change all the signs and all that stuff. It would be ridiculous to have to change everything. But
that was my first thought too. I was like, well, they already spent all the money on the 2020 stuff, so they just said screw it.
Yeah. I was watching with my wife, and she was like, "Why does it say 2020? It's 2021." I was like, "Yeah, well, it was supposed to be last year, so it is what it is." But tonight on the show, we have a very special guest for everyone, and I hope that we have some viewers from Sportszilla on here because it's going to be a familiar face to a lot of them. And the man that's going to be joining us is the founder and president of Sportszilla, Mr. Jared Sneed. Jared, what is up, man? How are you tonight?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on. This is your second time on the Nest podcast. I believe we had you on a couple years ago when your Miami Dolphins were drafting Tua, if I'm not mistaken, and we talked a little bit about some NFL football action and got your thoughts about that. So what's been going on? What's up with you? Where's the Dolphins going to end up this year?
So. I kind of want to talk a little bit of trash with Dave Phillips, one of my longtime friends here, huge Jets fan, or whoever's popular for the better part of a decade. So we'll see who jumps on here soon. But I think the Dolphins are another 10-win team. The defense is going to be stout, but I think everybody's saying Tua is going to be kind of the centerpiece, right? If he doesn't perform, a lot of fingers will be pointed around, but he really needs to have a season. So much like any team, he does have a good quarterback play, but we really need to see something, borderline special out of him so he can be a good team this year.
Yep. We were talking before we came on live, and you're not really that high on Tua. You think that he's just kind of an average guy or whatever. One of our friends, Justin, who is a Falcons fan, he went on record and said that Tua was going to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time within a 10-year span. So, you could go either way with it. I think his injury does kind of limit that ability. He got hurt in college and then hasn't really shown the brilliance that he once promised. But it will be interesting to see how he does this year without that security blanket of Ryan Fitzpatrick. But one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about, Jared, was I know you're a big college football fan as well. And, breaking news came out today that officially Texas and Oklahoma have announced that they want out of the Big 12 and they are going to be looking to go elsewhere. All signs point to the SEC. What do you think about that? And what do you think the implications are for the rest of NCAA football?
So, let's try to take in a deep breath here, right? It's going to be kind of long-winded, I guess. I think it's a great conversation. Just from open source stuff, right? So listening to a lot of other sport entities that are out there. It seems like the buyout clause is $76 million, something like that, and some change to both teams. Why wouldn't you jump to the SEC? Is kind of my thought on that. Like, unless you're in the Big Two of the SEC, you should probably be trying to jump ship to try to go to one of those conferences. And even more importantly, I'm a Big Ten fan. I'm a Penn State fan. But even more importantly, if you have an opportunity to go to the SEC, it's pretty smart. Money wise in general. I think it's kind of crazy to realign college football. To think that we would see an Oklahoma or a Texas, lined up in the regular season, versus an Alabama, Tennessee, something like that. Just something that's kind of just out of the norm. Yeah, how crazy it would be both UT's regular season playing against one another. Kind of wild. We could have that argument.
Our good friend Adam, who's a friend of the show, he's a Texas fan, and whenever the news or the rumors started circulating, I told him, I was like, hey, there's already a UT, there's already an Orange T in the SEC, we don't need another one. So it's a built-in rivalry waiting to happen. So I'm excited for that.
I think we had the conversation the first time I was on, was talking about the pay for play. I think we briefly kind of talked about it, and the changes that started in 1 July of this year, players, making money on their likeness, has completely changed the dynamic of college football, professional football for that matter, because we're going to see those changes 3 or 4 years from now when these players start coming up, and these guys are already worth $20 and $30 million before the draft even happens.
Speaking of that, I can't remember the player's name, but it was some sort of quarterback, and already he's apparently supposed to have signed some sort of deal that's worth $1 million sponsorships and all that stuff. So I think we're going to see that like $20-30 million college players here pretty soon.
See a lot more Lambos and Ferraris on college campuses, won't we?
Yeah. They won't have to be stealing crab legs and stuff anymore.
Oh, nice. I like that.
I think it is going to make a pretty big ripple effect into a lot of this stuff. And I was looking at it, and when Texas and Oklahoma officially leave, because I don't think their contracts aren't up until 2025, and it seems like they intend to serve out the rest of that contract before they're going to move anywhere or do anything, unless they buy out with that $76 million or whatever it is. It seems like they want to finish out their contracts, which shame on the Big 12 for letting both of those contracts expire at the exact same time. That's terrible planning. You want to try to at least stagger that a little bit so you can keep one of your breadwinners there, but that's not my business. But I think NCAA needs to look at everything and address this issue before it gets too out of hand, and just look at it, because them leaving the Big 12 is going to leave 8 teams sitting there without any kind of major revenue source. It's basically going to cripple those 8 teams. Meanwhile, over in the SEC, you're going to have an abundance of talent. You're going to have abundance of resources and financial juggernauts, if you will. And they're going to be beating each other up every single week. Like you said, you're going to see Texas and Alabama line up in the regular season. Somebody's got to lose. You're going to see Oklahoma going up against Georgia, Florida. Somebody's got to lose. LSU's going to get in the mix. Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, one of those teams might sneak up and still win out of there. So you're going to potentially have all these teams that are 1, 2, maybe even 3 lost teams that are the best teams out there that are going to be trying to sneak into the college football playoffs. I think what they need to do is address that before it even gets to that point, and just somehow select the top 64 teams in college football and put them in 8 different conferences with 8 teams per conference. Let each of those 8 conference winners go on to a college football playoffs, and then you've got the 8 best teams, right? Yeah. So, and make it like the Premier League. Make it so that the bottom 4 teams, the teams with the 4 worst records, they get booted out, and teams that played in all these other little conferences from around that happen to piece together a great season, give them a shot at the big dance. Why not?
Right. I see no problem with that. And I think because the SEC is so just full of talent and full of money, something's going to happen. And I think the NCAA is losing a lot of power here, because for what it's worth right now, the SEC could split off and have a elite division of college football in and of themselves and not have to worry about any of the rest of the country. And of course, now that Texas and Oklahoma are going to be moving over, that's even more ammo for them to do that. I don't know if they would ever, because I think the NCAA is they've got their hands in everything and they're all accredited or whatever, but everybody knows that that's where all the talent is. Oklahoma is basically the one team other than Ohio State that's a non-SEC team that has a chance. And they kind of hardly ever do it. I mean, it's always Bama. Clemson's been in there for a little bit. So I think they need to do something to try to even the playing field a little bit. Otherwise, it's just going to be the SEC show every single season.
And it gets stagnant. It gets boring. Like, I can't tell you the last time that I was genuinely excited about college football. Maybe it's because I'm a Tennessee Vols fan and they've sucked for the past, since 1998. And that doesn't lead to a lot of excitement whenever your team's always kind of mediocre. But it's always, like you said, it's always Bama. It's always Clemson. It's always Georgia up in there. Florida was one of those dominant teams for a while back when Tebow and Urban Meyer and all those guys were down in Florida. Aaron Hernandez, they were just killer. But yeah, you see what I did there? But it's not as fun as it could be. And I think if they tried to revamp it, it could definitely be better. And you could do it like take those 8 conferences and just make it, north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest. Just go around the compass and just, pick and choose them from that. Or you can keep like the little conference names and all that they like to have, like SEC East, SEC West, ACC, Big 8, whatever you want to call them. You can keep these like fun little conference names so that they can have some sort of identity or whatever, but split it up evenly, make it like the Premier League. That would make it exciting. If you happen to be one of those teams that get knocked out, like say you're the bottom 4 team, but then 3 years later, you're back in that elite group of 64. Imagine the buzz on that campus of how excited the students would be, how excited the players would be that they've gotten promoted. They've been playing good football for so many years that now they've gotten promoted, and they are one of the select 64 teams that have a shot at the end of the year at a national title. How cool would that be?
Yeah, for sure.
It was I try to tread carefully about giving a shout out to other shows that I do listen to, but I was listening to Dan Patrick this morning, and they put a really neat spin. They kind of, well, actually, it was Dan Patrick and a little bit of some other shows I was listening to. But so a few years ago, when the college football playoff, was implemented, right? The writing on the wall that 4 teams was not enough. Absolutely, I don't think anybody has ever agreed with the NCAA that 4 teams is enough. So we're almost to the point that an SEC championship means more than a national title. Because the gauntlet you have to go through that conference to win. Like, I'm not trying to praise, Alabama with their 73 championships in 7 years, but it really does, it kind of shows it means more than a Clemson that's winning. Well, I shouldn't say it means more, but they have, some of these teams have harder trails. They brought a really neat spin that, let's say Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC. We realign, I think it was West Virginia and Iowa State. No, West Virginia and Notre Dame, move them into the Big Ten. And then the ACC would absorb 2 more teams, and then all 3 of those conferences has 16 teams. And then pretty much who cares about everyone else? And it would be somebody like an Oregon or something like that hops on with the ACC, albeit they've got to fly 4 or 5 hours for away games, but you have 3 conferences. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but it's more of that's what it looks like it's leaning towards, because if Oklahoma and Texas leave, either the NCAA is going to have to step in, or you're going to see a huge shift in college football where, talking crazy here, but let's say 5-10 years from now, the SEC decides they don't want to be a part of the NCAA anymore, and they start their own football league, for that matter. Like a pre-NFL kind of league. Just come to SEC, play 3 years, go to the NFL, because that's what you're going to do.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's absolutely right.
Kind of what I think about it.
It's very possible. I don't like the idea of having like Oregon and Stanford and UCLA and all that stuff. I don't like the idea of having them fly 4 to 5 hours to play a game, and then to have teams like Bama or Clemson fly 4 to 5 hours to play them on the West Coast. I don't like that. That's why I kind of wanted it a little smaller with the 8 teams. That way you can keep it a little more geographically sound, if you will. You can keep them a little bit closer, and then the only time they would have to fly to play each other is when it's big bowl games or during a college football playoff or something like that. But I see your point, and if those 3 did consolidate to have 16, maybe you could find another 16 somewhere else, and then boom, there's your 64. So it's definitely doable to make these realigned to where it makes a little more sense for these teams. With the SEC, it's ridiculous to have an SEC East and an SEC West, but still be the SEC. Why not just make them 2 separate conferences, let each winner go on to the college football playoffs?
Yeah.
It sucks that they have to eliminate one or the other in a SEC championship game.
Yeah. And Jared hit on a couple things too, for sure. Like, I think you're spot on with the SEC championship being more than almost anything in the whole college football. Because if you can be the SEC champion, that means you've beaten the best teams in the entire league. And it doesn't matter what any other league is doing. It doesn't matter if Clemson is undefeated or not, because once it comes to that championship and that SEC team plays against whoever else is left, that's when you really see just how good that other team is that's not in the SEC. And you mentioned Oregon, and that's a big one for me because they have a lot of money coming in. They have a huge deal with Nike. They always have. Their last big hurrah was Marcus Mariota. And I think they're probably going to be one of those teams that sees Texas and sees Oklahoma leave and say, you know what, we could probably move somewhere and make a little bit more of a name for ourselves, because unless they have just an outstanding team out of nowhere, they can't compete with those guys. I mean, they're all the way out in the West Coast. It's just not going to happen these days, just the way football is. And I think they're going to see that and think that they want a piece of that too. And I'm sure there's plenty of other schools that have tons of money and they want a better program, and they see this as a potential way to just kind of shake things up and see what they can get done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's definitely something there that, the guys that get paid a lot more than we do to put these programs together, I think they can figure something out, and I hope they do. Maybe they're listening to us tonight, and maybe they'll take some of our ideas. If so, you can hit us up on Venmo or Cash App and just go ahead and float us our royalty checks, because we'll be looking for them soon. One league that's out there that has a whole plethora of other problems is the National Football League, or the no freaking COVID league, if you want to call them that, because they are saying absolutely no postponements. They're not going to allow any kind of rescheduling for any kind of COVID game. So if there's a COVID outbreak by an unvaccinated player, guess what? You have to pay for everything, and you have to also accept a forfeit that'll impact you when it comes to playoff seeding. They have dug their feet in, and they are not moving on this. And what do you guys think? The NFL is seemingly taking the toughest stance of all professional sports with their upcoming second COVID season underway.
Go ahead, Jared.
So one of the few times that I'll maybe praise a league, within its own, to try to stray away from being political about it. I'm just glad to see them take a stance. You know what? Establish guidelines and stick to it, because I don't think anybody enjoyed week 3, 4, 5 last year, and there would be a postponement or delaying of a game, and they're like, well, what happens next? Because one team's bye week may be built in the first half of the season, while another team's is built, 8, 9, 10, however that may be. Those bye weeks are crucial, because that's how teams plan, those 2-week training periods. I mean, the NFL is a process. Every week is a process. 52 weeks a year spent on 60 Sundays. Like, there is no playing around. So I think it's great that they're taking a stance. Let's see if they stick to their guns come week 3 or week 4. If Tom Brady, decides to test positive for COVID, and they don't want to see a Monday Night Football game get canceled or something like that. That'll probably be the big moneymaker, right? Is a Monday Night Football or a Thursday night game that they're going to say they're going to, just forfeit the game. There's no way the NFL will turn away hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. I don't see that happening. I'm just one man in that regard, but I'm just glad to see them take a stance, establish a guideline, stick to your guns, and hold true to it.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that. At first I was like, man, that's kind of a hard stance and a weird take. But then I started thinking, what else are they going to do? They can't just extend the season for 20 weeks. And then when everyone's ready to go start their playoffs, the NFL is a unique sport in that when it comes time to play, you have to play. I mean, you can't just do a doubleheader the next week. You can't just continue the game on for however long it has to take. So I get this stance, but just like you said, we'll see if they stick to it. If you remember, the Chiefs had a small little COVID outbreak, and we were interested to see if they were going to make Patrick Mahomes not play and do the COVID protocols. Turns out he didn't. And then I think it was Lamar Jackson who couldn't play for a game, and they had to play their backup. and they kind of picked and choose who to force to play and who they said, okay, you've got too many positive tests, you guys can postpone your game and stuff like that. So hopefully they don't pull that kind of crap. Hopefully it's an even playing field. And if it is, then I think it'll be just fine. This is something that they're going to have to deal with, and this is how they chose to deal with it. And I think it's no problem as long as they stick to their guns and as long as they don't say, oh, well, Tom Brady and so are playing tonight. We got to make that game. So just make it happen. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how stringent they actually are, because it's easy to say that now, but like Jared said, if you've got a superstar out there who might not play, and then they're going to have to play their backup and no one's going to care to watch the game, are they going to continue with that kind of protocol?
I mean, that's what derailed the Patriots season early on, is whenever Cam Newton got COVID and then they started losing games. They had to play a game against those Chiefs with Brian Hoyer as the starting quarterback, and that kind of started the downward spiral of what became the Pats season. One thing that I did like about all the confusion and the postponements and all that stuff was there were some weeks when we had a football game on nearly every day of the week.
That's
so
true.
You actually got a chance as a football fan to watch more football, because you had a Monday night game. Sometimes you had a Tuesday afternoon game. Sometimes you had a Wednesday afternoon game. Then you had your normal Thursday night football. You had your Sunday night football game. So you had all football almost all week. So it was exciting as a fan to get to see so many games. But I do understand Jared's point about, they plan out their bye weeks. And if they're being forced to take a bye week in week 3, that makes the back end of your season really long, especially if you've got, I know they didn't last year, but if they go back to playing in London, or if they go back to playing a Mexico game or something like that, where these guys are traveling international, that takes a lot out of you. You want that bye week built in there somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard players talk about even just the Monday night football games and the Thursday night football games just throw everything off, because your whole practice schedule is changed around, your rest days are changed around. And then that following week, you got to play on Sunday again. And you just have to reset everything before you're kind of ready. So I think a game on Wednesday or a game on whatever day is fun for the fans, but it's a little unfair in a sport like football, where it's so physical and those dudes are banged up all the time. So yeah, I think this is going to be okay as long as they stick to it. I mean, it seems like COVID's not gone yet, and we kind of thought that this year would be kind of clear of that. Clearly it's not. So I guess we're going to have to see if there's any big outbreaks or anything.
Well, and you notice whenever I was initially setting up the conversation, I mentioned that if it's an outbreak among unvaccinated players, that's whenever all of these major penalties and fines and all this stuff are going to be levied. And what's interesting is Schefter came out today and said that in the month of June, 13 NFL staffers and 4 players tested positive despite being vaccinated. One of those that is fully vaccinated that tested positive is the Colts head coach, Frank Reich. He's asymptomatic right now, but he's not going to be available for the start of training camp. So that could potentially derail some of the Colts plans. They've got a brand new quarterback in there in Carson Wentz trying to learn the Colts system. I know he's played with Frank Reich before, so they're at least familiar with one another and all that stuff, but it's still, this is something that's already starting to rear its ugly head and could have an impact on the Colts season. But what gets me is these guys are vaccinated. They're fully vaccinated. What if the outbreak comes from a vaccinated player? How are they going to handle that situation? Another thing to consider is, what are they going to do if players like DeAndre Hopkins decide that they're going to retire instead of facing a season where they could potentially become that player that hurts their own team? What if they just retire? What if guys like him and what's his name that used to play for the Cowboys that played for the Bills? What was it? Beasley. Yep. Cole Beasley. What if he just up and retires because he doesn't want to deal with the crap?
Yeah, that's going to be bad for business for sure, especially with the big names like D-Hop. I mean, that's one of the premier wide receivers in the whole league. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to do. That's a sticky situation because, in my opinion, in my opinion, no one should be forced to do anything that they don't want to do. And I get it. The NFL is its own company. They're basically the player's employer. I don't know, but where else are you going to go to play elite level football and do what you have been doing for years and years now? You're going to take a pay cut if you leave. You're going to do all kinds of stuff like that. But it's honestly just going to play out. I'm very interested to see if anybody actually retires this year because they don't want to get a vaccine or they don't want to just deal with it for a second year or whatever. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But it's a wild situation for sure.
Zach, I think you hit on something pretty good there is, I don't know, well, let's see if I can say this right. NFL players have more of a voice, the last couple of years and now than probably they ever have. The NFL has been a very tight-knit organization as far as, we have a CBA, you adhere to it. If you want to see changes, we make those changes at the next CBA, right? Now players are coming out and a lot more vocal than what they have been, at least that I can remember in the last few years. We can kind of talk about the Aaron Rodgers situation that just keeps glooming. But there is not going to be a player to retire over this. I'm sorry. DeAndre Hopkins is making like $18 million a year. I do believe, I'm a huge proponent of athletes making top dollar because you know what? There's things these guys do that the average person cannot do. They are the 1%, essentially of 1% when it comes to physical ability. They are not going to turn away a dollar, and the NFL absolutely has the right to make a rule. Whether I agree with that rule, whether any of us agree with those rules, but they can make those rules all day long. And for $18 million, there's probably not a vaccination out there I wouldn't get. So, I have a hard time believing other guys think differently than that. So,
yeah, I tend to agree with that as well. Simply for the fact of D-Hop is making his money because he's a good NFL player. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to just go ahead and retire now and then go get a job on ESPN doing some commentary or doing a show or something like that. He just doesn't strike me as one of those guys who's got that like outward personality and has that in him like a Pat McAfee. So for guys like that, I think they're going to stick around. And if they don't want to get the vaccine, they're going to pay these fines or whatever. It's going to be chump change compared to what they're paid. So I think ultimately I tend to agree with that. I don't think anyone's going to actually pull the trigger on that. But like you said, these guys are more vocal and more outspoken than they ever have been. And it might just be that. It might just be they're getting on Twitter and complaining about their job and complaining about their boss. So
that being said, D-Hop, if you do retire, you're more than welcome to come here on the Nest podcast and be another voice on the show. We'd be happy to have you on here. We'll give you your platform, and you will be able to speak out about whatever kind of anti-vax things you want to talk about. So let's go. D-Hop, new co-host on the Nest podcast. Let's do this. Another guy that might be looking for some major changes in his career is Deshaun Watson. He did report to Houston Texans training camp to avoid getting the $50,000 a day fine, but he came in and said, I still want to be traded. I still don't want to be here. So please do whatever you can to make it happen, to get me out of here. What do you think of his chances of getting traded before the season starts? And Jared, do you think that any team is going to be willing to take that gamble?
We kind of talked about that pre-show. I think there's multiple teams out there that are willing to take that chance. I think ultimately is Houston wants to take that pay cut, right? I'm going to venture out there to say that I thought 3 or 4 months ago, even when like these allegations coming out, and it was, I don't know if you guys remember back in February, it was getting wild. February, March, it was just weekly allegations. And I like to throw that word out there and use that very strong allegations. There's still not a court case that has actually been drawn up. He's supposed to be deposed, and I think it's like 16 months from now. So try to get in the legal side of things. I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I'm not going to do that. if the Dolphins turned around and did a Tua and a pick, nothing too crazy. And it's not that I want to get rid of Tua. It's just I know how good Deshaun Watson is. I think if you're a team who's a quarterback away, I think you have to offer something. You don't give up the house because the trade is in the favor of the team taking the gamble of taking Deshaun Watson. I do believe that if something was going to happen this season, we've already seen it. I think the NFL does a great job of using the commissioner's exemption list and putting these guys on that list as soon as they can. That way teams don't waste money and waste picks. We're what, 7 weeks away, I think, 8 weeks away from the NFL season. And we're not talking news. This has been going on for 6, 7, 8 months now. I think even longer than that. Forgive me, I'm probably going at a very bad date there, but he's not been put on the exempt list. There's no new information necessarily. I think if you're a quarterback, you got to take a chance and go after it. Dude threw for 70% last year on a just dumpster fire of a football team. They were trash. And the dude lit it up. The guy can play. He's we'll talk about it a little bit later when we start talking about top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, however you want to go. But I could not argue with anybody if you say he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I couldn't argue that. I may not like it. And a lot of people may not like it, but the dude can play. I would say a Dolphins team would absolutely go after a Deshaun Watson. And then trying to think of those teams that may be that quarterback away. I don't think there's teams that are quite that close that would be worth the trade. Those Patriots teams that that are in between quarterback battles right now. I don't think that's the answer. So, you're probably talking 2 or 3 teams that are out there.
Yeah. The throwing the Dolphins in there is definitely something that I wouldn't really necessarily consider my first team that would be interested in that. I would look to somebody maybe like the Broncos who would be more interested to make that kind of a move. But the Dolphins, maybe they could. They were the team that was kind of snubbed out of last year's playoffs. And I said it earlier, like if Tua can survive without the security blanket of Ryan Fitzpatrick, they might be able to do something this year. Deshaun doesn't need a security blanket. He's a big boy. He can handle his own business. So that would be interesting if that happens. I would hate to see it as a Pats fan because I would hate to play him twice a year, but it is what it is. That's also going to be a big gamble going forward for this season. But if you make that trade, if you're a GM and you pull the trigger for a Deshaun Watson trade, you're trading him for not just this year. You're trading for him for the next 12 years. 13 years down the road. You're thinking long-term investment with this guy. And you said something, Jared, that he's not on the commissioner's exempt list. Why would he be? They're just in practice right now. They're just in training camps right now. The commissioner's exempt list is for games. There is still a chance that he could get a suspension based off of these allegations. There is a chance that he could end up on the commissioner's exempt list because of these allegations. Look at Trevor Bauer in Major League Baseball. He's not been convicted of anything. He's not been actually charged with any crimes, yet he's been basically put on MLB's version of the commissioner exempt list and is under investigation, and he's not playing right now. He's nowhere near the team right now because of that. So there's a chance that Deshaun could end up in a situation like that. But again, if you're a GM from another team and you're going to make this trade, you're not necessarily trading for him to play in 2021. You're trading for him to play for the next decade.
Yeah, I could see a team like the Dolphins, maybe even the Titans. I don't know how high up they are on Ryan Tannehill.
They just gave him an extension.
Yeah, but I mean, if you can, like Jared said, if you can get a Deshaun Watson, that's a perennial player to try to go after. But there is that gamble that he's going to face some serious jail time. Who knows what this is gonna entail with this whole trial type stuff. So there is that risk of you losing him like a Michael Vick for 3 or 4 years or whatever it might be. But I mean, if you're willing to make that move, and if you can make it make sense, and you don't have to give up the entire world to get him, I could see some teams out there making the move for him, and maybe there's some teams out there that think this is the piece they need this year to plug him in, get him playing, and if he can be as good as he was with a terrible Texans team, with a decent team, maybe they can make a run for a Super Bowl this year. And if he ends up not playing for the next couple of years, so be it. We'll just have to see. It is interesting that they haven't come out and said anything yet. I was kind of expecting MLB to do the same with Trevor Bauer and just kind of let it play out a little bit, but they were pretty quickly. They pretty quickly, basically made him take that administrative leave or whatever they called it. But
the difference is MLB's in the middle of a season and NFL is not in their actual season yet.
Sure. Yeah,
that's when we'll see the big difference is when the season starts and games count.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I wonder if they're going to just wait until, a week before week 1 and say, yeah, Deshaun Watson is suspended. It's possible. It's
very possible. Yeah. I can't remember if it was Ian Rappaport or Tom Pelissaro, but one of those guys reported that the Texans, they have started entertaining questions or fielding calls about Deshaun Watson, but it's being rumored that it would cost at minimum 3 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
So you're mortgaging the future for sure.
I doubt that price is going to last. I mean, maybe it will. I don't know. That's pretty damn steep, especially for a guy who has a completely questionable future.
Yeah, but I mean that would be the standard going rate for a franchise quarterback in his prime. Think about if somebody like a Patrick Mahomes was on the trade block or Lamar Jackson was on the trade. Even Aaron Rodgers. Imagine if he were to be traded from the Packers, they would expect several first-round draft picks for him, and he's 36, 37 years old.
Yeah, but I would imagine that a guy's price goes down when he has 20-something allegations for him, and he could be potentially going to jail for a couple of years.
The key word that you say in that, though, is allegation.
Right.
It's not been – there's no conviction there yet.
I think somebody really has a chance to – I mean, there's 0 allegations on the table. 3 first-round picks is a steal for a Deshaun Watson type quarterback.
Absolutely.
Because you're probably going to spend the next 3 drafts trying to find that type of player. And albeit, are you going to have a top 5, top 10 pick to even do so, right? Allegations is a funny word to throw out there. Biggest thing, I think you're going to see this probably moving forward. I mean, Ray Rice probably being the tipping point years ago when this happened, right? So, I'm not trying to defend anyone because there's no room. There's no gray area. It's black and white. You break the law, especially when it comes to DV or assault, sexual assault, things of that nature. You should absolutely pay the price for it, right? Whatever our judicial system says, that you adhere to the law, right? But you hate that word allegation getting thrown around. And I mean, let's say 2 years from now, there's nothing that ever comes from this, and you potentially ruin somebody's career and the dozens, if not hundreds, of lives that are affected by him moving around. Like that's what's even crazier, because there's going to be staffers that lose jobs over him, regardless, even if you're not on the Houston or within the Houston's organization. It's the team that didn't go after him, that had that chance. Like there's just the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that kind of float around there. By all means, if he's guilty, the man should never play another down of football ever again. So, but we all know how the NFL kind of treats things like that. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very weird situation because, like you said, it's all allegations at this point. But I mean, in today's climate, those things are taken a lot more seriously, and this is a pretty high profile issue. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this one. The NFL does have a history of just kind of not really caring, especially about the domestic violence stuff. But man, I don't know. One of their top named guys has a lot of allegations against him, and he's probably going to go to court here relatively soon. I would assume. It's a strange situation for sure. But like you said, if you're going to try to find a Deshaun Watson in your next 3 first-round picks, good luck. So maybe someone's just going to say, we're never going to get this chance again. And he might play 1 season for us and then be done. But we might as well take the chance in the hopes of him being able to play. So we'll just have to see.
What is it? They say scared money never made money. you got to put the money on the table if you want to win it.
Right.
We had some questions whenever we announced that Jared was going to come on here from the Sportszilla guys, and Jared Mahan said that he wanted to hear our top 5 quarterbacks and our predictions for the AFC and the NFC title games. So we've kind of talked about that a little bit offline, and we've been thinking about it as we've been talking on the show tonight. But do you guys have your list in no particular order of who your top 5 quarterbacks are?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Zach, do you want to go ahead and kick us off, and then Jared, you can follow suit?
Sure. So no particular order?
No particular order. Just you can just rattle them off if you want.
I'll say my number 1 guy, and then in no particular order after that. My number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. That dude he's got he covers every angle. He's agile, he's accurate, he can throw long, he can pretty much do it all. Granted, he does have a stellar offense that helps him out, but that guy is the real deal for sure. And I think last year was a weird year for everybody. And he's got several Super Bowls left in him. I wouldn't really take last year as a big red flag for him. Next I've got Josh Allen. He's awesome quarterback. He's going to be good for a long time. And I think the Bills are at least going to be in contention. It's going to be super interesting to watch that conference unfold as the Patriots try to figure out who their next quarterback is. Is Mac Jones the real deal? Who knows? But I do know that Josh Allen is for sure the real deal. So it's at least going to be a head-to-head battle between the Patriots and the Bills for a good while. Honestly, it's crazy to say this in 2021, but I've got to put Tom Brady up there too. I mean, for being 900 years old, he won another Super Bowl with another team without Bill Belichick and all the other. He's a system quarterback type people. Sure, you could say that the Buccaneers bought their team basically, but you plug in some other quarterback into that's not as high level as Tom Brady or any of the other high level quarterbacks. And I don't know if they win the Super Bowl like Tom did. Tom just has this other gear that he can go into when it's playoff time. And he's been there a million times. He knows exactly what to do and he just does it. And it's flawless. And it's wild to see. Obviously another one is a guy who we talked about is Deshaun Watson. He's just a crazy talent. And what he can do with Texas is very impressive because like I said, with Patrick Mahomes, he's great, but he also has a great offense to play. When D-Hop got shipped off to Arizona, I kind of thought the wheels were going to fall off in Texas. And Deshaun Watson still did it with people I can't even name. And I can only imagine what he could do with a team with some talent. And that's what, 4 for me? Was that 4?
I think it was 4.
Yeah. So who's 5th? Yeah, this is tough. I want to say Aaron Rodgers, even though I'm not big on Aaron Rodgers as a whole, but I just think for what he did last year, kind of like what Deshaun Watson did was hit with his team. Aaron Rodgers had one Devontae Adams, and before last year, he was almost just a no-name wide receiver. Yeah, he was fine, but he played backseat to other guys that were on that team. But last year he stepped up and he was number 1 target of Aaron Rodgers, and they had a good running back. And that team went on to the AFC Championship or NFC. I can't remember what conference.
NFC.
And I just never would have expected that. And Aaron Rodgers is doing his thing, and he has been for a while. And I think if another guy that if he were on a better team or a team with more talent, he would definitely have more Super Bowl wins than he does now. And it's crazy to think because he's basically just a different version of Brett Favre. And those two guys both have 1 Super Bowl apiece. And I don't know if that's their fault. I don't know if that's just their consequences, but I think if at least in Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, if he would have had some help, like everyone always says, no one ever gives him help on the Green Bay team. If he would have had some help, he probably would have been able to win a few more Super Bowls, or at least make it to more Super Bowls. So yeah, I think for what he's given, it's crazy what he can do. I mean, how do you not just shut down? How do you not double or triple team Devontae Adams and beat the Packers every year? It's mind blowing. And he was able to win another MVP last year with basically a handful of weapons.
Yeah, I think to your point, Zach, I think that says more about the Packers organization than it does those players, Favre or Rodgers.
Right.
Jared, who do you got?
So our lists are pretty similar here, right? I'll probably put them in an order, right? You got Patrick Mahomes. There is nobody on the planet that can say otherwise. He's not a top 3 quarterback, maybe a top 2 quarterback. If you say that he's not a top 5 quarterback, you deserve a high five in the face with a chair. Your favorite quote ever. Like, the dude's phenomenal. What, 25, 26 years old, I think, give or take. I mean, dude's got 10 more years of phenomenal football. He's absolutely, like you said, Zach, he is surrounded by weapons and in a system that thrives. That he and the system thrive with one another. It is perfect. We are seeing a 2004 to 2007 Patriots kind of system built again. Not similar systems, but just the teams built to be together. Absolutely. I'm going to go Tom Brady as number 2, just because he is 400 years old and he was 20. Credit that to his lifestyle, I guess, and the decisions he's made over the last 22 years as a professional. I'll never bet against him in a Super Bowl, especially him in a Bill combo. We talked earlier. What happens if he and the Patriots meet? Then I just don't bet on that Super Bowl. Tom Brady is going to find a way to win. It's not so much that I think that he necessarily plays better come the playoffs. It's the people around him play better. He is, to make like a basketball comparison, but like it's kind of the opposite of a Michael Jordan, is that he brings the best out of everyone around him. People want to play for Jordan because they're scared that he's probably going to punch him in the face at practice. But Brady brings the best out of people. And he does it week in and week out, especially in the playoffs and when games matter. I'm going to go to Josh Allen's number 3. Young, big arm, he can move, and he's in a place that is built to win. I hate to say it. Just, being, a Dolphins fan and, watching the East all year round, every year, but the dude can play, and he's awesome. I'm going to throw Aaron Rodgers out as number 4, and I kind of wanted to throw some stats out there about the guys around him, right? He has made guys millionaires, multi-millionaires, his whole career. He's never had anybody around him. And I'm going to say Devontae Adams, I'm going to say he's overrated in the fact that he's only had 2,000-yard seasons in his entire career. Like, we're talking to a guy who's been in the 7, 8 years. He's had 2,000-yard seasons. So I don't think he's just surrounded by these weapons. I think Devontae Adams goes to another quarterback 3 or 4 years ago. He may kind of flame out. But we can never make that comparison. We'll never know, right? That being said, the dude had like 115 catches, 1,300 yards, I think 18 touchdowns last year. He had a phenomenal season. I will never take that away from him, but he's not a Randy Moss throwing up 15 touchdowns a year, all right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
He had a crazy season, and he won a lot of people those belts for fantasy seasons, right? The dude absolutely went off, but he went off because he's got a quarterback who has been on record saying he's trying to make a Hall of Fame career and throw less than 100 interceptions for a career. He wants 500 and less. He wants 500 touchdowns and less than 100 picks. And just think about that stat line. That ratio it's kind of weird, man. I mean, it's like video game stuff when you make your 99 overall player. Aaron Rodgers is that good. Phenomenal. Reigning MVP. So then we get to number 5. And as we talked earlier, I'm going to throw Dak Prescott in there as my number 5. I think you can throw a shout out to Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, but I think Dak is number 5. The dude is a stat machine, and I've hated the Cowboys since I was a kid. My brother's a Cowboys fan. Being the kind of sports fan I am, you pretty much hate the teams that are good. as you're growing up. I always hated the Bulls and Cowboys as kind of dudes when I was younger. But dude, Dak is a stat machine, and that team is built offensively to win right now. So he has no excuses, and he's that good. He just needs to stay healthy. His legs are made of glass. So
Dak Prescott was leading the National Football League in passing 2 weeks after he got hurt. Let that sink in for a minute.
Unreal.
I do want to throw out there because Jared brought that up. Jared Mahan, he's a friend of mine. We've worked together a few years ago, and I know he'd be happy to say that I put Dak as number 5 because I have just gotten his face just screaming about how much I hate the Cowboys and anything that ever comes out of it. And just so I know hopefully if he's watching now, that's great. If not, I'll text him later.
Let him know
if you will.
Yeah. You guys have pretty similar lists. For me, Mac Jones got to be number 1. I've got Cam Newton on there, number 2. Jared Stidham has to be on the list. Stiddy, Auburn product, good, reliable third stringer. Brian Hoyer, stud, been around the league forever. And then I got Quinn Nordin. Many people might not know who Quinn Nordin is. He is the New England Patriots backup field goal kicker. He came from Michigan. Dude's a stud. Definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the league. No, obviously I'm joking. My list is similar to you guys. I just had to try to spice it up a little bit. Mahomes, stud. I think it's unanimous that he's the best quarterback in the league. And then if he's not the best, if there's a 1A and a 1B, then I've got Allen as my 1B because that dude, he's right up there as well. The only thing where I differ with both of you guys is I don't have Brady in my top 5. I've got him just outside, and I do have Watson in my top 5 just because of how dynamic that dude is. And if he's on the field, I think he's a better option than Brady, especially if you're looking long-term. But what makes Brady so dangerous is look at all the weapons that he has compared to the weapons that anybody else has. And you got a quarterback that's so accurate that, Tom Brady, he can thread a needle with a football. So it is, he is a machine when it comes to that. Speaking of, do you guys think that video of him throwing the football at the machine is fake?
I don't think
you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, yeah. There's a video that's been circulating where he throws 3 balls and he's about 15 yards or so away, and it hits the machine dead perfect so that it reloads and shoots the ball back to him. I don't know. Some people are saying it's real. Some people are saying it's fake. I don't know.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out.
With that video, I believe it a little more. I remember those great Powerade commercials years ago, and they would show the players doing, I think it was Powerade. It was like Michael Vick throwing the ball out of the stadium or something crazy.
Yeah.
They were super cool. And so I think it's definitely feasible. But TV magic.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him at I think it's the Pro Bowl where they do the accuracy throws and they have to hit those targets. He's hit some wild targets like that, and he's hit some crazy, on the move target type throws, and he makes it look just super easy. So I think it's feasible. I haven't seen it, so I'll have to check it out.
I'm pulling it up right now for you and for our viewers. So you see, he hits the jugs machine, and then he steps back another 10 yards or so and hits it for the 3rd time, knocks it down. Machine shoots the ball up in the air. Tom looks at the camera and says, "Let's go."
Yeah, that does look kind of weird. Just the view of whenever the ball hits the machine is
yeah, a little bit of photo magic in there, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
We also had another question from Daniel Henry that commented on one of our posts and asked, "Why is Zach trying to find a new team?" And we responded to that in the comments so that he was aware. But Zach's not just finding a new team because he's abandoning his old team. He's trying to find a new team because he's never had a team before. So he grew up in New Mexico, not really around any professional football teams, didn't really have an interest. And he got into football, started watching football, started playing fantasy football, became a 2-time fantasy football champ and got hooked. And the rest is history. Now, finally, 3 years after starting a sports podcast, he's going to have his own team that he can have a rooting interest for, because we have done this bracket starting with all 32 teams, and we've narrowed it down to the final 4. And are you ready to see who your finals are, Zach?
Oh, I'm very ready.
All right, so in the final 4, we have the New England Patriots versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we also have the New Orleans Saints versus the Seattle Seahawks. So I want to talk a little bit and tell our listeners and let Jared in on how we got to this point so far. So in the round of 32, the Seattle Seahawks faced off against the Giants, and Zach picked his team based off of which city he would rather vacation in, either Seattle or New York. He chose Seattle. In the Sweet 16, the Seahawks faced off against the Cowboys, and it was Zach's choice. He got the spin of the wheel to where he got to make the pick. He said Cowboy fans were dumb and that he was picking the Seahawks based off of that. In the Elite 8, the Seahawks squared off against the Packers, and it was between the mascots fighting. And he thought that a giant Seahawk, would be able to beat a beer-swilling Packer fan in a fight. So that's kind of where he went with that. For the Saints, in the round of 32, they squared off against the Panthers, and it was the best party city, New Orleans or Charlotte, North Carolina. That's a no-brainer. New Orleans is definitely the better party city. In the Sweet 16, the Saints squared off against the football team, and the question for that one was NFL hooligans. So it was if the NFL fan bases were like England soccer-style hooligans, who would win in that fight? He thought that the New Orleans Saints fans would be the better, rougher, rowdy fan base. In the Elite 8, the Saints squared off against Tom Brady's Buccaneers, and that matchup was determined by the amount of Twitter followers each team had. The Saints had slightly more Twitter followers than the Bucs. The Jacksonville Jags are kind of a surprise team in this bracket to make it this far, and in the round of 32, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers based off of having the better party city. We've pretty much determined that any city in Jacksonville would be a better party town than any city from Pennsylvania. The Sweet 16, the Jags were against the Broncos. And again, the Jags got a party question because Zach chose which city he would rather party with his favorite band in. And his favorite band was Led Zeppelin, and he said, once again, he would rather party in Jacksonville, Florida, than he would in Denver, Colorado. In the Elite 8, the Jags and the Bengals got into a mascot fight. So we had a Jaguar and a Bengal fighting it out, and that one was determined because I kind of swayed him with Jackson DeVille being such a daredevil of a mascot and parachuting into the stadium without a harness, holding on to a cord as he descended down from thousands of feet in the air. Dude's a maniac. Zach loved it. For the New England Patriots in the round of 32, they faced off against the Cleveland Browns, and it was the best uniform. Zach said that he liked a uniform that was red, white, and blue like a true Patriot and not something that looked like a load of crap like a Brown. And then in the Sweet 16, it was against the Raiders. Once again, we had Twitter followers, and the Patriots smoke-checked the Raiders for the amount of Twitter followers that they had. In the Elite 8, it was the Patriots and the Bills, and the criteria there was the SEC boys. Which team had more SEC players on their roster, and the Patriots won that one decisively. So that's how we got to where we are now, and I'm ready to get going on these finals.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to go ahead and spin the wheel, and we're going to first talk about the NFC side of things, New Orleans versus Seattle. And the question that's going to be our criteria is fatty gone eat. So what that one is I did a little bit of research, and according to Thrillist.com and their article, What to Eat at Every NFL Stadium, I went and I picked their suggested menu item from those two stadiums, and you're going to get to pick which one Fatty's going to eat.
I like this.
So for the New Orleans Saints, of course, they have the Cajun influence down there. So they have the black and gold po' boy, and this is made with roast beef debris, their words, not mine, and bayou fried shrimp. Sounds like a standard po' boy for you.
Yes, sir.
And for the Seattle Seahawks, they have a Dungeness crab roll, and that's a citrus aioli, celery on a fresh bun.
Interesting.
So I remember you said that Seattle was kind of you picked that city to vacation in because you like the hipster vibe of Seattle over New York. So nothing says hipster more than citrus aioli and celery.
It's funny that obviously both cities are kind of coastal and they have that seafood flair, but I think it's an easy choice for me to go New Orleans there. I mean, everybody knows that New Orleans has amazing food. So for sure, the Saints are moving on.
The Saints are moving on, and they are the first team in the finals. Jared, what do you think about that? Which one would you have chosen if that was your choice?
I think Zach made a good choice. I would gauge it if I was at the game. So it's usually if you ever go to a sports game, like a pro sports event with me, we're kind of running back and forth. I buy a beer, you buy a beer. We just kind of share the experience. If you tried to order a citrus aioli, whatever that is, you're getting a hot dog when I get back. There's no way I could look somebody in the eye and order that at a football game. Po' boy is still probably pretty messy and probably an eventful sandwich within itself, but New Orleans is the right pick.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and our final matchup that's going to set our finals for next week between the Patriots and the Jaguars. Let's go ahead and spin and see what our question is here. Hall of Famers. This one should be pretty easy to determine because I don't think the Jags have any. So, and Zach, you've got that list, right?
I do. So let's see. Yeah, the Jags have 0, and the Patriots have where are they on my list? They have 5.
Yep. So that one was pretty easy. Hall of Famers kind of did you in. But in the championship round, we're going to have the New England Patriots versus the New Orleans Saints.
I never would have thought that they'd come down to the end. But I mean, two great teams, two teams full of a winning history. So here we go. One more round, and I get a new team.
You get a new team, and they're two historic franchises. They've been around. Both have won Super Bowls in the past. The Patriots have about 5 more Super Bowls than the Saints do, but who's counting? And they've both kind of in a rebuild mode.
Yeah.
The Patriots, they're trying to see how things go with the new quarterback, Mac Jones. Maybe he's going to be the future, maybe not. The Saints, they just lost Drew Brees to retirement. Let's see what they come up with. Maybe Jameis Winston's the answer. Maybe Taysom Hill becomes the first player to play every position on a football field. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
Jared, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it'll be kind of a fun choice between either because you're probably getting a team that's, like you said, in a rebuild phase. So you kind of get to feel that depression that a lot of NFL fans get to experience of that, what are we this year other than being on the field? So you got 2 coaches that are, probably not going to be there in 10 years.
Yeah.
So you'll probably get to see some new organizations. So I think it's, I'm never going to root for the Patriots ever in my life. So, for all intents and purposes, go Saints next week.
And I'm sure our buddy and longtime listener Harvey is going to be rooting for the Saints as well.
Yeah, and of course I'm rooting for the Patriots because then we can declare this a Patriots podcast and start to really rally around that, try to build our fan base around our weekly Patriots talk come football season. But that's all I've got for this week. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about?
I'm good.
No, man. Thanks for, as always, thank you guys for having me on. So back in the States now, maybe I can be a little more active across your all's podcast and a lot across social media. So glad to be in, have somewhat of a normal lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely glad that you're back stateside and back running the ship there at Sportszilla. Why don't you let our listeners know where they can find Sportszilla and what that actually is all about over there?
So we started Sportszilla, give or take, about 3 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
2.5 years ago. Not quite as long as you guys have been around. And we kind of use it as a platform for, I say joyful debate, but it's a no holds barred platform for you to post your thoughts. I probably wouldn't put feelings there. And just kind of all things sports related. We're going to argue about it. I've kind of been on a kick where I kind of talk trash about ESPN, and their garbage reporting. So, anybody kind of jump over. We allow anybody to post. It's a free to post platform, and you'll see one of the three of us pretty much commenting on there daily, or if not daily, it's as often as anybody. Just kind of want to grow the sports fan community.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect place for, the average Joe type fan who probably sits around just like we do, and sits around with our buddies and talks the latest news, the latest, standings or whatever it might be, and gives their opinions. I've found a lot of the takes on Sportszilla are pretty legit. People have some pretty good takes on a lot of stuff, and I love to see the interactions between, guys that are on there. People will say their opinions and then back them up, and people question those opinions. And it's an awesome place to just kind of talk about the current standings of everything that's going on in the sports world, and talk about, past stuff. We always talk about old school teams and how great they were and all that kind of stuff. So it's a perfect place for anybody who's a sports fan that likes to just kind of chat it up with other like-minded sports fans. Obviously we share good memes anytime we come across them. So it's just an awesome little group that has been great for us. It's been really fun to have a group like that is just all sports all the time, kind of like we are on this show.
Yeah, we're definitely thankful to be part of the Sportszilla family as well. Jared, whenever you started the group, you reached out and brought us in pretty quickly after your inception, and we've been happy to be part of it this entire time. And like Zach said, a lot of these guys, average Joes out there being the experts, and we like to bash on the worldwide leader. We refuse to mention the initials, but we like to bash on them a little bit as well, because they have some pretty terrible takes and they like to steal our content. So, you know what? Up yours, worldwide leader. That's all we have time for tonight. We appreciate everybody listening and commenting along. Thank you, Jared, for coming on. Thank you for being part of the show. We welcome you back anytime. You are welcome to come and join us, especially as it gets closer to football season. And hang tight after the outro, because I've got something else to tell you. So
Cool.
Thanks a lot. Peace.